Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most ridiculous lies. The champagne flute trembled in Amber's perfectly manicured hand as she stood on the marble balcony overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The designer gown that cost more than her annual rent fluttered in the ocean breeze, and for a moment, she almost believed she belonged in this world of private jets and endless luxury. Almost. You know, Cameron's voice was soft behind her, closer than she expected. When this week started, I thought the hardest part would be convincing my business partners that we were real. She turned slowly, her heart doing that crazy fluttering thing it had been doing all week whenever he looked at her like that, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. And now? She whispered. His hand reached up to gently touch her cheek, and those hazel eyes that had been so suspicious 7 days ago now held something that made her breath catch. Now I realize the hardest part is going to be pretending this was all fake. The confession hung between them like a promise and a question all at once. In the distance, she could hear the sound of Marcus Blackwood's angry voice carrying from the villa, still trying to expose her, still trying to destroy everything Cameron had worked for. But right here, in this moment, with the man who had started as her employer and somehow become everything she never knew she wanted, none of that seemed to matter. Cameron, I have to tell you something. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus's triumphant voice boomed from the terrace speakers. I have an announcement that will change everything. Amber's blood turned to ice. He knew. Somehow Marcus had figured out who she really was. The fairy tale was about to end, and she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to go back to her tiny apartment, her empty fridge, her ordinary life where men like Cameron Mitchell existed only in movies. But mostly, she wasn't ready to break the heart of the man who had somehow learned to trust her with his. What happens now? She asked, her voice barely audible over the ocean waves. Cameron's thumb traced across her lower lip, and he smiled. That devastating smile that had gotten her into this mess in the first place. Now, beautiful girl, we fight for what we want. But how do you fight for love when your entire relationship is built on a lie? It's a pleasure to have you here. Tell me, where are you hearing this story from? If so, leave your comment at the end. Your opinion is a gift. Thank you so much for participating. The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., but Amber Richardson had been staring at the cracked ceiling of her tiny Bronx apartment for 2 hours. The eviction notice had been sitting on her coffee table for 3 days, and the deadline was today. Ring. Amber, you need to get here now. Her best friend Destiny's hysterical voice exploded through the phone. Des, it's 5:30 in the morning. What? Listen to this. You know that rich guy I've been dating? Cameron Mitchell? Amber rolled her eyes. Destiny had a terrible habit of getting involved with complicated men. What did he do now? He offered me $15,000 to pretend to be his girlfriend for a week. Amber shot up in bed. 15,000? Why? Something about impressing his business partners on a private island. But I can't go. My mom's in the hospital and... Destiny, stop, you can't be thinking about... Amber, you're blonde, fun, the same height as me. He'll never notice the difference. It's just 1 week pretending to be sophisticated. You watch those romantic movies all the time, you know how these people act. Amber looked at the eviction notice and then at her empty refrigerator. Des, I barely graduated high school. How am I supposed to pretend to be a millionaire's girlfriend? $15,000, Amber. 15,000. 2 hours later, Amber stood in front of a Manhattan skyscraper, wearing her only decent dress and carrying Destiny's borrowed purse. Her hands shook as she pressed the intercom button. Cameron Mitchell for Amber Richardson, she said, almost choking on her own last name. The doorman examined her from head to toe with a disapproving look before letting her in. The elevator went straight to the penthouse, and when the doors opened, Amber was greeted by a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a business magazine. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. You must be... He stopped mid-sentence, frowning. You're not Destiny. Oops. No, I mean, yes, I cut my hair. Amber nervously touched her blonde locks. Radical change, you know. Cameron observed her for a long moment that felt like eternity. Destiny, You look different. It's the hair, and I, started a new diet. The spinach diet. Spinach diet? Super effective. Amber laughed nervously. So, about this island thing. Cameron sighed and stepped away, running his hand through his hair. I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. Marcus Blackwood has been trying to push me out of the company for years. This week on the Hamptons Island is my only chance to impress the Japanese investors and make sure he can't bring me down. Marcus Blackwood? That name sounds familiar. Amber lied, having no idea who he was talking about. He's my cousin and my biggest business rival. If he finds out our relationship is fake... Cameron stopped talking and looked directly into her eyes. Destiny, are you sure you can do this? You need to act like a sophisticated socialite for an entire week. No slang, none of your usual ways. Amber swallowed hard. Of course, I'm super sophisticated. I love opera and caviar and those fancy things. Cameron raised an eyebrow. Since when do you like opera? Since recently. It's a new phase of mine. He continued studying her with those penetrating hazel eyes. All right, the private jet leaves in 2 hours. Did you bring appropriate clothes? Amber looked at her single small suitcase and smiled forcedly. Obviously. What have I done with my life? The private jet was nothing like what Amber had imagined. She'd expected something fancy, but this was like stepping into a flying palace. Cream leather seats, a mahogany bar, and windows so large she felt like she was floating in the clouds. Your champagne, miss, the flight attendant said, offering her a crystal flute. Oh, I don't really drink, Amber started, then caught Cameron's warning look. I mean, how delightful. I absolutely adore bubbly things. Cameron closed his laptop and studied her carefully. Destiny, since when do you say delightful? Think fast, Amber. It's my new vocabulary improvement program. I'm reading sophisticated books now, like Shakespeare and other wordy people. Wordy people? You know those classic authors who use fancy words? She took a sip of champagne and immediately started coughing. Wow, this is very fizzy. Cameron's expression shifted from suspicious to amused. Are you feeling all right? You've been acting strange all morning. Strange? Me? Never. I'm just excited about our romantic getaway. She gestured dramatically with her champagne flute, accidentally splashing some on the white leather seat. Oops, sorry, I'll just... She grabbed a napkin and started scrubbing frantically. Destiny, stop. Cameron gently took her hand. It's fine. The staff will handle it. The moment his fingers touched hers, Amber felt an electric shock run up her arm. This was bad. Very bad. She was supposed to be pretending to be his girlfriend, not actually developing feelings for him. So, she said, trying to distract herself, tell me about these Japanese investors. Are they nice? The Yamamoto Group is considering a $2 billion partnership with Mitchell Industries. This deal could secure our company's future for the next decade. Cameron's voice became serious. But Marcus has been spreading rumors about my leadership capabilities. He's convinced them that I'm too young and reckless to handle such a significant partnership. That's terrible. You seem very leadery to me. Cameron laughed. Actually laughed. And Amber's heart did a little flip. Leadery? Is that your professional assessment, Ms. Business Expert? Hey, I watch the news sometimes. I know about stocks and business things. Okay, quiz time. What's a fiscal quarter? Amber panicked. It's when business people count their money 4 times. Cameron stared at her for a moment, then burst into laughter. Oh my God, Destiny, you're adorable when you're trying to be smart. Adorable? Amber felt her cheeks burning. This fake relationship was feeling more real by the minute. Attention passengers, we're beginning our descent to East Hampton Airport, the pilot announced. Amber pressed her face to the window and gasped. Below them stretched an enormous private island with a white sand beach, a massive mansion that looked like a castle, and several other buildings scattered across manicured gardens. "Cameron, this place is incredible. How do you afford—" She stopped herself. Destiny would already know about Cameron's wealth. "I mean, it's even more beautiful than I remembered. You've never been here before, Destiny. This is Marcus's family estate." Double oops. "Right, I meant more beautiful than in the photos you showed me." Cameron raised an eyebrow. "I never showed you photos." "Oh, then more beautiful than I imagined from your descriptions." "I never described it either." Amber felt sweat beading on her forehead. "Well then, you have a terrible memory." Before Cameron could respond, the jet touched down on a private runway. Through the window, Amber could see a small group of people waiting, including one man who looked like Cameron, but with darker hair and a much less friendly expression. "That's Marcus," Cameron said, following her gaze. "Remember, we're deeply in love. Can you handle that?" Amber looked at Cameron's perfectly sculpted face, his kind eyes, his lips that she definitely shouldn't be thinking about kissing. "I think I can manage," she said softly. The jet door opened, and Cameron stood up, straightening his tie. "Ready to meet high society, sweetheart?" Sweetheart. Even though she knew it was part of the act, the word made her stomach flutter. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, standing up and immediately tripping over her own feet. Cameron caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest. For a moment they were inches apart, and Amber could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "Careful," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "We haven't even started the performance yet." "Performance?" "Right. This is all pretend." But as they walked down the jet stairs together, Cameron's arm around her waist, Amber couldn't shake the feeling that some things were becoming very, very real. Marcus Blackwood stood at the bottom of the stairs with his arms crossed, wearing a smile that looked more like a predator sizing up prey. "Well, well," Marcus said loudly enough for the other guests to hear. "If it isn't my dear cousin and his charming girlfriend." The way he said charming made Amber's skin crawl. "Marcus," Cameron replied coolly. "Thank you for hosting us." "Of course, I'm so looking forward to getting to know Destiny better." Marcus's dark eyes fixed on Amber with an intensity that made her want to hide behind Cameron. "I feel like there's so much about you that we don't know." He suspects something. "Well," Amber said, trying to sound confident, "I'm an open book. What would you like to know?" Marcus's smile widened. "Everything." The guest suite was bigger than Amber's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, a king-sized bed dominated the center of the room, and there was an actual chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Holy sh! Amber caught herself. I mean, how absolutely magnificent. Cameron set down their luggage and loosened his tie. "The cocktail party starts in an hour. The Yamamoto executives will be there, along with several other potential investors." "Cocktail party?" Amber's voice went up an octave. "Like, with fancy people and fancy drinks and fancy conversation?" "Destiny, you've been to dozens of these events." "Right. Destiny the socialite." "Of course, I just get excited about mingling with business moguls." Cameron walked over to her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Hey, are you nervous? You seem different today." The concern in his voice made Amber's heart melt a little. When he looked at her like that, like she mattered, it was easy to forget this was all pretend. "Maybe a little nervous," she admitted. "This deal is really important to you, isn't it?" "It's everything. If I lose this partnership..." Cameron ran a hand through his hair. "Marcus has been building a case against me with the board for months. One more failure, and they might actually vote me out as CEO." "That's horrible. The company is named Mitchell Industries. It's your family business. Started by my grandfather, built by my father, and apparently about to be destroyed by me." Cameron's jaw tightened. "Unless I can prove I'm capable of handling major international partnerships." Without thinking, Amber reached up and touched his cheek. "Hey, you're brilliant. Any idiot can see that. Those investors would be crazy not to want to work with you." And Cameron caught her hand against his face, his eyes searching hers. "When did you become so wise?" The moment stretched between them, charged with something that felt dangerously real. Amber was acutely aware of how close they were standing, how his thumb was tracing circles on her wrist, how his eyes kept dropping to her lips. "Knock, knock, knock, Cameron. Open up, cousin." Marcus's voice shattered the moment like a gunshot. Cameron dropped Amber's hand and stepped away, the spell broken. "Coming, Marcus," Cameron called, then whispered to Amber. "Remember, we're madly in love." Shouldn't be too hard to pretend, Amber thought as Cameron opened the door. Marcus waltzed in uninvited, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I thought you two might want to join me for a pre-party drink. Get better acquainted." His gaze fixed on Amber. "I'm so curious about your background, Destiny. Cameron's mentioned you so little." "Well," Amber said, scrambling for something to say, "there's not much to tell. I'm just a regular girl who loves sophisticated things." "Sophisticated things," Marcus repeated slowly. "Like what?" "Oh, you know, art galleries and wine tastings and polo." "Polo?" Cameron looked surprised. "Since when do you like polo?" "Since I started taking lessons. I'm actually quite good at hitting the ball with the stick." Marcus nearly choked on his champagne. "You mean the mallet?" "Right, the mallet, that's the technical term." "And which club do you play at?" Marcus pressed. Amber's mind went completely blank. "The polo club? Which polo club? The good one?" Cameron intervened quickly. "Marcus, shouldn't we be getting ready for the party?" "Of course. Though I should mention, Mrs. Vanderberg will be there tonight. You remember her, don't you, Destiny? From the charity auction last month?" Amber felt her blood turn to ice. She had no idea who Mrs. Vanderberg was. "Oh yes, Mrs. Van der Berg. How could I forget such a memorable person? She'll be so excited to hear about your recent trip to Monaco. I'm sure she'll want all the details about the casino night at the Monte Carlo Bay Hotel." "Monaco? Casino night? Help me." "It was very casino-y," Amber said weakly. Marcus's smile turned predatory. "I'll make sure to introduce you two right away. Well, I should let you get dressed. The party starts soon." After Marcus left, Cameron turned to Amber with confusion written all over his face. "Destiny, what's going on? You hate polo, you've never been to Monaco, and you definitely didn't go to any charity auction last month." Amber felt panic rising in her chest. Maybe I forgot? I've been so busy with my new hobbies." "Your new hobbies?" "Yes, like polo and traveling and charity work." Cameron stared at her for a long moment. "Are you feeling okay? Should we call a doctor?" "No, no doctors, I'm fine, just excited about the party." But Cameron was still looking at her strangely, and Amber knew she was running out of excuses. How was she supposed to fool an entire party of socialites when she couldn't even convince one suspicious cousin? An hour later, Amber stood at the top of a grand marble staircase, wearing the most expensive dress she'd ever touched, a borrowed gown from Destiny that actually fit perfectly. Cameron looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, offering her his arm. "Ready?" he asked. Amber looked down at the elegant party below, men in tuxedos, women dripping in diamonds, servers carrying champagne and caviar. Everyone looked like they belonged in a movie, and she felt like she was about to walk onto a stage without knowing any of her lines. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said, taking his arm. They descended the staircase together, and Amber tried to channel every elegant movie star she'd ever seen. Grace Kelly, Audrey Hepburn, anyone who knew how to walk in heels. "Cameron, there you are." A distinguished Japanese man approached them with a warm smile. "You must introduce me to this beautiful lady. Mr. Yamamoto, I'd like you to meet my girlfriend, Destiny Richardson." Amber extended her hand gracefully. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Yamamoto." "The pleasure is mine. Cameron tells me you're involved in charity work." "Thanks a lot, Marcus." Oh yes, I'm very passionate about helping people who need help. Mr. Yamamoto nodded approvingly. Wonderful. Which causes are closest to your heart? Well, I really care about children and animals and the environment. That covers just about everything, Mr. Yamamoto laughed. You have a big heart. She certainly does, Cameron said, squeezing her hand. The pride in his voice made Amber's chest warm. Destiny, darling. Amber turned to see an elegantly dressed older woman approaching with Marcus right behind her, wearing that same predatory smile. Mrs. Vanderberg, Marcus announced, I promised I'd reunite you two. The woman looked at Amber expectantly, and Amber realized with growing horror that she was supposed to recognize this person. Mrs. Vanderberg, how wonderful to see you again. Again? The woman looked confused. I'm sorry, dear, but I don't believe we've met. The party seemed to freeze around them. Amber could feel Cameron's confused stare, Marcus's triumphant smirk, and the curious glances of nearby guests. Oh, Amber laughed nervously. You're right. I was thinking of a different Mrs. Vanderberg. There are so many of you. I mean, it's such a popular name. Actually, Mrs. Vanderberg said with amusement, it's quite rare. I'm the only Mrs. Vanderberg in our social circle. Marcus stepped forward with fake concern. Destiny, are you feeling all right? You seem to be having trouble with your memory tonight. Cameron's grip on her hand tightened. She could practically feel his growing suspicion. I'm perfectly fine, Amber said, her voice getting higher. Just overwhelmed by all this sophistication. Perhaps, Marcus said smoothly. You'd like to tell everyone about your recent polo achievements? I'm sure they'd love to hear about your technique. Amber felt trapped. Every eye in the immediate vicinity was on her, waiting for her to prove she belonged in their world. Well, she began desperately, polo is really about connection. Between you and the horse and the mallet stick thing, you have to really whack that ball with passion. Several people exchanged glances. Someone muffled a laugh. Fascinating technique, Marcus said dryly. And the Monaco trip? The casino night? Monaco was very French, Amber said, grasping at straws. Actually, Mrs. Vanderberg interjected gently, Monaco isn't part of France. It's an independent principality. The conversation around them had completely stopped. Amber felt sweat beading on her forehead despite the air conditioning. Right, independent, that's exactly what I meant. Very independent and princessy. Cameron was staring at her now with a mixture of confusion and growing realization. Marcus looked like Christmas had come early. Destiny, Cameron said slowly. Can I speak with you privately for a moment? This is it. He knows. The whole plan is falling apart. But just as Cameron started to lead her away from the crowd, the lights suddenly went out. In the darkness, Amber heard Marcus curse loudly, followed by a tremendous crash and the sound of something very expensive breaking. When the emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, Marcus was standing in the middle of what used to be a priceless Ming vase, covered head to toe in chocolate fountain. Oh my God, Amber gasped, forgetting all about her sophisticated act. Are you okay? Marcus stood there dripping chocolate, his perfect hair ruined, his expensive tuxedo destroyed, and his dignity in tatters. I'm fine, he said through gritted teeth. The entire party burst into laughter. Even the usually composed Japanese executives were chuckling behind their hands. Well, Mr. Yamamoto said cheerfully, this is certainly more entertaining than most business dinners. In the chaos that followed, staff rushing to clean up, guests laughing and taking photos, Marcus storming off to change clothes. Amber found herself temporarily forgotten, but she knew it was only a matter of time before Cameron demanded answers, and she had no idea what she was going to tell him. The party continued for another 2 hours, but Amber barely remembered any of it. She smiled, nodded, and made small talk on autopilot while her mind raced with panic. Cameron stayed close to her side, but she could feel his questioning glances burning into her skin. By the time they returned to their suite, Amber's nerves were completely shot. "Okay," Cameron said the moment the door closed behind them. "What the hell is going on?" Amber kicked off her heels and tried to buy time. "What do you mean? Don't play dumb, Destiny. You don't remember Mrs. Vanderberg. You think Monaco is French, and apparently you've taken up polo using, what did you call it? A stick? I've been under a lot of stress lately." "Stress doesn't make you forget basic geography." Cameron loosened his bow tie with sharp, frustrated movements. "And since when do you care about children and animals and the environment? Last month you complained about having to walk past a homeless shelter." "Oops. That definitely sounds like something Destiny would say." "People change," Amber said desperately. "I've been soul-searching." Cameron stared at her for a long moment, then walked to the window overlooking the ocean. "You know what's funny? All evening, watching you struggle through conversations about things you should know, I kept thinking how much more real you seemed." "Real? The Destiny I've been dating for 3 months is sophisticated, sure, but she's also cold, calculating. She knows exactly what to say and when to say it." Cameron turned back to face her. "But tonight, watching you panic about polo and call Monaco princessy, you were adorable, genuine, like someone I could actually fall for." Amber's heart stopped. "Cameron, I know it sounds crazy, but I think I'm falling in love with this version of you. The real you. Oh God, this is so much worse than being caught." Amber sank onto the edge of the bed, the weight of her deception crushing down on her. "You don't understand? Then help me understand. Talk to me." Before Amber could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her blood turn to ice. "Destiny. How's the rich boy? Mom's surgery went well, but she's asking about the money. Did you get paid yet?" Cameron was close enough to see the screen. His face went very still. "Destiny's asking about money? Why would you be texting yourself?" Amber stared at the phone, her mind completely blank. There was no way to explain this, no possible excuse that would make sense. "Cameron, I can explain." "Who are you?" His voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Who are you really?" The question hung in the air between them like a guillotine. Amber looked at this man who had been nothing but kind to her, who had opened up about his fears and dreams, who had just confessed to falling for her, and realized she had to tell him the truth. "My name is Amber Richardson," she said quietly. "Destiny is my best friend. Her mom was having surgery and she couldn't come, so she asked me to substitute." Cameron stared at her for what felt like an eternity. "Substitute. I know how it sounds. You've been lying to me for 2 days straight." "Yes. Everything you've said, everything you've done, it's all been fake." "Not everything." The words came out as a whisper. "The way I feel about you, that's real." Cameron laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right. The way you feel about my money, you mean?" "No, Cameron, it's not like that. $15,000, that's what this is about, isn't it? That's what Marcus heard you and Destiny discussing." "Marcus heard us? You don't understand the situation I was in." "What situation could possibly justify this level of deception?" Cameron's voice was rising now. "Do you have any idea what you've put at risk? My business, my reputation, my relationship with the most important investors in Japan?" "I know, and I'm sorry." "Sorry?" Cameron ran his hands through his hair. "Amber, if Marcus figures this out, and he will, because he's smart and suspicious and he already knows something's wrong, this deal is dead. My company is finished. Everything my family built will be destroyed because I trusted a stranger to pretend to be my girlfriend." The words hit Amber like physical blows. She could see the betrayal in his eyes, the anger, but underneath it all, the hurt. She had hurt him. This good, kind, vulnerable man who had shown her nothing but respect and care. "Cameron, please listen to me." "Why should I? How do I know anything you say now isn't just another lie?" Amber stood up, desperate to make him understand. "Because I'm telling you the truth. Yes, I needed the money. Yes, I was desperate enough to agree to this insane plan. But everything that's happened between us, every moment, every feeling, that's been real. How can it be real when you've been pretending to be someone else? Because I haven't been pretending with you. Not about the important things. Tears were starting to blur her vision. When you told me about your fears, when you opened up about the company, when you looked at me like I mattered, I wasn't acting, Cameron. That was me. The real me. Cameron was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Why? He asked finally. Why did you need the money so badly? Amber wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was being evicted. My job at the diner doesn't pay enough to cover rent in New York, and I couldn't find anything better without a college degree. Destiny offered me a way out, and I took it because I was desperate and stupid, and I never thought what? I never thought I'd fall in love with you. The confession hung in the air between them. Cameron's expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still there. Amber, even if what you're saying is true, how can I trust you? How can I introduce you to investors tomorrow knowing our entire relationship is built on a lie? Before Amber could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. Cameron, Marcus's voice called from the hallway. I need to speak with you, it's urgent. Cameron and Amber looked at each other in alarm. Marcus sounded different, excited, like he'd discovered something important. Just a minute, Cameron called back, then whispered to Amber. Get in the bathroom, don't come out until I tell you. Amber wanted to protest, to stay and face whatever was coming, but she could see the panic in Cameron's eyes. She nodded and quickly slipped into the marble bathroom, leaving the door cracked so she could hear. Cameron opened the suite door, and Marcus practically bounced inside. Cousin, I have the most interesting news. It's late, Marcus. Can't this wait until morning? Oh no, this can't wait. You see, I've been thinking about your charming girlfriend all evening. Something about her seemed so familiar. So I made a few phone calls. Amber's heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it in the next room. Marcus, I'm tired. Did you know there's no record of a Destiny Richardson attending the Hampton Academy? Or the Swiss finishing school she supposedly went to? Or any of the charity events she claims to have attended? Amber pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from gasping. That's ridiculous. Why would you be investigating Destiny? Because I care about you, dear cousin. And I wanted to make sure this woman was worthy of the future CEO of Mitchell Industries. And I discovered something fascinating. There is a Destiny Richardson who matches the general description. Blonde, mid-20s, from New York. But she's currently at Mount Sinai Hospital, visiting her mother who just had emergency surgery. Amber felt the world tilt on its axis. Which means, Marcus continued with obvious glee, the woman you brought to my party, the woman you've been parading around as your girlfriend, is a complete fraud. Silence filled the room. Amber could practically hear Cameron's mind racing, trying to figure out how to handle this. I don't know what game you're playing, Marcus, but no games, Cameron, just facts. Would you like me to call hotel security? Or should we handle this privately? What do you want? Cameron's voice was tired, defeated. I want you to admit that you're not ready for this level of responsibility. That you're so desperate to impress investors you'd bring a complete stranger and try to pass her off as your girlfriend. Marcus, tomorrow morning you're going to withdraw from the Yamamoto deal. You're going to recommend that the board consider other leadership options. And in return, I won't expose your little charade to the investors. Amber couldn't take it anymore. She pushed open the bathroom door and stepped into the room. Don't you dare, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Don't you dare threaten him because of my mistakes. Marcus's smile was triumphant. Ah, there she is, the mysterious not Destiny. Please tell us who you really are. My name is Amber Richardson. Destiny is my best friend, and yes, I've been pretending to be her. But Cameron had nothing to do with planning this. I lied to him too. How touching, Marcus said sarcastically. A confession. I'm not finished. Amber stepped closer to Marcus, drawing herself up to her full height. You want to destroy Cameron because you're jealous, because he's everything you'll never be. kind, genuine, and actually capable of running this company. Amber, don't, Cameron started. No. He needs to hear this. Amber turned back to Marcus. You're so threatened by him that you'd sabotage the biggest deal in the company's history just to make yourself look better. That's not leadership. That's cowardice. Marcus's face was turning red. You have no idea what you're talking about, you little... I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've been watching you all evening. You don't care about this company or these investors. You just want Cameron to fail so you can swoop in and take credit for his work. Amber, stop, Cameron said quietly. You're making this worse. But Amber was on a roll, months of frustration and desperation finally finding a target. The truth is, you're not half the man Cameron is. He cares about this company, about the people who work for it, about doing the right thing. All you care about is winning. Marcus stepped closer to her, his eyes dangerous. You're going to regret this, sweetheart. Maybe. But at least I'll regret it knowing I stood up for someone worth fighting for. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then Marcus laughed, a cold, calculating sound. How romantic, the gold digger and the naive rich boy. This is even better than I hoped. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to show the Yamamoto group this video. I'm going to tell them exactly what kind of man they'd be partnering with. Someone so desperate and dishonest that he'd bring a complete stranger to pose as his girlfriend. Cameron stepped forward. Marcus, if you do this, you'll what? Fire me? You won't have the authority. Marcus pocketed his phone. Enjoy your last night as CEO, cousin. And enjoy your fake girlfriend while you can. I doubt she'll stick around once the money runs out. After Marcus left, the room fell into heavy silence. Cameron sank into a chair, his head in his hands. I'm sorry, Amber whispered. I'm so sorry. Cameron looked up at her and she could see the devastation in his eyes. It's over, he said quietly. Everything I've worked for, everything my family built, it's all over. Amber felt tears streaming down her face. There has to be something we can do, some way to fix this. Cameron shook his head. There's no coming back from this, Amber. When those investors find out I lied to them, it's finished. Then let me fix it. How? Amber wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. I don't know yet, but I got you into this mess and I'm going to get you out of it. Cameron looked at her for a long moment. Why? You have your money. You could leave tonight and never see any of us again. Because, Amber said, her voice stronger now, I meant what I said. I love you, and I'm not going to let that snake destroy everything you care about. For the first time since Marcus had left, Cameron's expression softened slightly. You really mean that, don't you? About loving me? With all my heart. Cameron stood up and walked to her, stopping just inches away. Even knowing this might be the last night I'm a millionaire? Even knowing I might lose everything? Especially then. Cameron reached up and touched her cheek gently. You know what the crazy part is? I believe you. You do? You could have run the moment Marcus left, could have taken the money and disappeared. But you're here crying because you think you've ruined my life, ready to fight for me even though you barely know me. Amber leaned into his touch. I know everything I need to know about you. Amber Richardson, Cameron said softly. You are nothing like the woman I thought I was falling for. You're 1,000 times better. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle or tentative like their first almost kiss. This was desperate, passionate, like they were drowning and each other was air. Amber melted into him, pouring all her love and apology and determination into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. So, Cameron said, resting his forehead against hers, what's this plan to save my company? Amber smiled through her tears. I have absolutely no idea, but we have until morning to figure it out. We? If you'll have me. The real me. Cameron's answer was another kiss, deeper and more passionate than the first. Outside their window, storm clouds were gathering over the ocean. But inside their suite, for the first time since this whole crazy adventure began, everything felt exactly right, even if it might not last past sunrise. Amber woke up at 5 a.m. with Cameron's arm around her waist and a brilliant, absolutely insane idea forming in her mind. They had fallen asleep on top of the covers, still in their formal clothes from the night before, after spending hours trying to figure out how to outsmart Marcus. The storm that had been threatening all evening was now raging outside their windows. Rain lashed against the glass, and thunder rolled across the ocean like cannon fire. Perfect. Careful not to wake Cameron, Amber slipped out of bed and grabbed her phone. She had 3 hours before the business breakfast where Marcus planned to destroy everything. Her first call was to Destiny. Amber? Do you know what time it is? Des, I need a huge favor. How's your mom? Better, thank God. The surgery went perfectly. But what's wrong? You sound weird. I need you to get to the Hamptons. Now. What? Amber, I can't leave Mom. Bring her with you. I'll send a car, a medical transport, whatever she needs. Des, this is life or death. What the hell is going on out there? Amber quickly explained the situation. Marcus's discovery, the blackmail, Cameron's devastation. Oh, honey, Destiny said softly. You really fell for him, didn't you? Completely. And I'm going to fix this mess if it kills me. Okay, tell me what you need. After Destiny agreed to the plan, Amber made her second call. To Mrs. Vanderberg, whose business card she had cleverly snatched from the woman's purse during the chocolate fountain chaos. Mrs. Vanderberg, this is Amber Richardson. We met briefly at the party last night. Oh yes, dear, the confused young lady. Are you feeling better? Much better, thank you. I'm calling because I have information about Marcus Blackwood that you and the other investors need to hear. But I need your help. 20 minutes later, Amber had assembled an unlikely alliance. Mrs. Vanderberg, who, it turned out, had detested Marcus for years. Mr. Yamamoto's assistant, who had been suspicious of Marcus's motives from the beginning. And surprisingly, 3 other party guests who had witnessed Marcus's behavior. Her third call was the riskiest. Marcus, it's Amber. Well, calling to beg for mercy? Actually, calling to make a deal. Meet me in the library in 30 minutes. Alone. Why would I do that? Because I have something you want more than Cameron's humiliation. There was a long pause. I'm listening. 30 minutes, Marcus. Come alone or the deal's off. Amber hung up and turned to find Cameron watching her from the bed, his hair tousled from sleep. What are you planning? He asked suspiciously. Trust me. Amber. Cameron, do you trust me? He studied her face for a moment. Yeah, I do. Then get dressed in your best suit and meet me in the main dining room at exactly 8 o'clock. And whatever happens, whatever you hear or see before then, don't interfere. Amber, you're scaring me. She walked over and kissed him softly. I love you. Remember that. The library was a massive room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars. Marcus was already there when Amber arrived, looking smug and well-rested. So, he said, not bothering to stand, what's this deal? I want you to leave Cameron alone. Marcus laughed. And in exchange, I'll disappear. Forever. No more fake girlfriend, no more embarrassment. I'll vanish, and you can tell the investors whatever story you want about why I left. Tempting, but I think I prefer my original plan. Even if I told you I have information that could destroy your career. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. What information? Amber pulled out her phone and showed him a recording app. Last night you made some very interesting phone calls. Calls to your contacts at several newspapers. Calls about leaking confidential Mitchell Industries information to damage Cameron's reputation. The color drained from Marcus's face. You're bluffing. Am I? You left your suite door open when you were making those calls. Sound carries in these old mansions. Amber smiled sweetly. Corporate espionage is a felony, Marcus. Even if the information is about your own family's company. You little... We're making a deal, remember? Amber sat down across from him. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to march into that dining room and tell everyone that your investigation of me was a misunderstanding, that you were confused and Cameron's girlfriend is exactly who she says she is. I'll do no such thing. Then I'll play this recording for Mr. Yamamoto. I wonder how he'll feel about partnering with a company where family members leak confidential information to the press. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. Fine, he said finally. But this doesn't end here. I'll find another way to destroy him. Actually, it does end here, because after this morning you're going to resign from Mitchell Industries. What? You heard me. A nice, quiet resignation. Maybe take that job offer from Peterson Holdings you've been secretly negotiating. Marcus went very still. How did you? You're not the only one who can make phone calls, Marcus. Turns out, when you tell people you're concerned about corporate espionage, they're very willing to share information about suspicious behavior. The library door opened, and Mrs. Vanderberg walked in, followed by Mr. Yamamoto and several other investors. What is this? Marcus demanded. This, said Mrs. Vanderberg, is an intervention. Mr. Yamamoto, would you like to tell Marcus what we discussed? Mr. Yamamoto looked stern. We've been talking to other members of your company, Marcus, about your methods, about your treatment of your cousin, about certain phone calls that were overheard. I don't know what lies she's told you. Actually, Mrs. Vanderberg interrupted, we haven't talked to Amber at all. We talked to your assistant, your department heads, several board members. It seems you've made quite a few enemies with your ambition. Marcus looked around the room like a trapped animal. This is ridiculous. You're all going to take the word of a gold-digging fraud over a member of the Mitchell family? Gold-digging fraud? Mrs. Vanderberg raised an eyebrow. Young man, do you know who this woman is? Amber felt her stomach drop. Had Mrs. Vanderberg figured out her real identity too? Her name is Amber Richardson, Mrs. Vanderberg continued. And she happens to be the daughter of Dr. Sarah Richardson, one of the most respected pediatric surgeons in New York. She's also the granddaughter of Richardson Hotels founder Charles Richardson. Amber's jaw dropped. I'm sorry, what? Mrs. Vanderberg smiled kindly. Dear, your grandmother and I were very close friends. You have her eyes and her determination. Though I must say, your acting skills are far superior to hers. You knew? I suspected from the moment we met. No one forgets meeting Sarah Richardson's daughter, but I wanted to see what you were up to. Marcus looked like he might explode. This is impossible. She's a waitress from the Bronx. Actually, Mrs. Vanderberg said calmly, her father left her a considerable trust fund when he died. She's been choosing to work as a waitress not because she had to, but because she wanted to understand how ordinary people live. Amber felt the world spinning around her. I don't have any money. I was being evicted. Were you, dear? Or were you just too proud to access your inheritance? Your father's will specified that you couldn't touch the money until you were 25, or until you proved you could make your own way in the world. I turned 25 last month, Amber whispered. Yes, you did. And from what I've seen this weekend, I'd say you've more than proven your character. Mr. Yamamoto stepped forward. Miss Richardson, this young man has been telling us that you're a fraud, that you've been deceiving Mr. Mitchell. But from our perspective, it appears that you've been testing his character, a very wise approach when considering a romantic partner. That's not... Amber started, then stopped. Looking around the room at all these powerful, intelligent people who seemed to think her deception was actually some kind of brilliant character test rather than desperate fraud, she realized something important. It didn't matter why she had started this charade. What mattered was what it had revealed. You're right, she said finally. I was testing Cameron, and he passed every test with flying colors. Marcus made a sound of disgust. This is insane. You're all insane. Marcus, Mr. Yamamoto said firmly. We've made our decision. Mitchell Industries is a company we want to partner with, but we want to partner with Cameron Mitchell specifically. Your resignation from the company would be appreciated. You can't force me to resign. Actually, Mrs. Vanderberg said, pulling out her own phone, we can. I've been recording this entire conversation, including your admission to corporate espionage and your threats against your cousin. I'm sure the board of directors would be very interested to hear it. Marcus looked around the room one more time, realizing he was completely outmaneuvered. Fine, he spat, but this isn't over. Yes, Amber said quietly, it is. After Marcus stormed out, Mr. Yamamoto turned to Amber with a smile. Miss Richardson, that was expertly handled. You would make an excellent addition to any business team. Thank you, but I should probably go explain everything to Cameron before he has a heart attack. Mrs. Vanderberg patted her arm. He's a lucky young man. Your grandmother would be very proud. Amber found Cameron pacing the dining room like a caged tiger. The moment he saw her, he rushed over. Are you okay? I heard shouting. Marcus came through here looking like he wanted to murder someone. What happened? Well, Amber said, taking his hands. The good news is that Marcus won't be bothering you anymore. He's resigning from the company. What? How? It turns out I'm much better at this corporate intrigue thing than I thought. She smiled. Also, it turns out I'm not exactly who I thought I was either. She quickly explained about the trust fund, her grandmother, Mrs. Vanderberg's revelation. Cameron stared at her in amazement. So you're actually rich? Apparently, though I have no idea what to do with money. I can think of a few suggestions. Oh, really? Cameron pulled her close. You could invest in a small but promising tech company. I hear the CEO is very handsome and recently single. Recently single? Well, he was dating the socialite named Destiny, but it turns out she was completely wrong for him. He's much more interested in a certain waitress from the Bronx who happens to be the bravest, smartest, most incredible woman he's ever met. Amber stood on her tiptoes and kissed him. I love you, Cameron Mitchell. I love you too, Amber Richardson. All of you. The real you. Through the dining room windows, the storm was finally clearing. Golden morning sunlight streamed across the ocean, painting everything in warm, hopeful light. So, Cameron said, spinning her around, what do you want to do now that you've saved my company and discovered you're an heiress? Amber laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I want to go home to New York and figure out what comes next. Together. Together sounds perfect. As they walked toward the door hand in hand, Amber caught sight of Marcus in the distance, loading his suitcases into a taxi. He looked bitter and defeated, but for the first time since she'd met him, he didn't look dangerous. Some battles, Amber realized, were won not through force or manipulation, but through truth, courage, and the willingness to fight for what really mattered. And what really mattered was walking right beside her, planning their future with the excited enthusiasm of a man who had just discovered that the woman he loved was even more extraordinary than he'd imagined. 6 months later, Amber, you're going to be late for your own engagement party. Destiny's voice carried through the penthouse apartment as she burst into the bedroom, carrying a garment bag and looking significantly more polished than she had 6 months ago. The past half year had been good to both Richardson women. Destiny had used her share of Amber's newfound wealth to start a successful event planning business, while her mother had made a full recovery. I can't find the necklace, Amber called from the walk-in closet that was still so large it made her dizzy. The one Cameron's grandmother left me. You mean this one? Destiny held up an exquisite string of pearls. You left it in the kitchen next to your coffee cup. Again. Amber emerged from the closet wearing a stunning emerald green dress that complemented her eyes perfectly. I'm still not used to having nice things. Well, you better get used to it fast, because in 3 months you're going to be Mrs. Cameron Mitchell, and rich people expect their wives to keep track of expensive jewelry. The thought still made Amber's stomach flutter with nerves and excitement. 3 months until their wedding, which had been planned down to the last detail by Destiny's new company. It was going to be held at the Richardson family estate in the Hamptons, the same property where this whole adventure had started, but now legally hers, thanks to the inheritance that had changed everything. Des, do you think I'm crazy? Marrying someone I've known for less than a year? Destiny stopped fussing with the necklace and looked at her seriously. Honey, you've been through more real-life drama together than most couples experience in a decade. Plus, the man proposed to you with a ring he designed himself and a speech that made me cry, and I don't even like him that much. You like him? Fine, I like him. He's perfect for you, which is annoying because it means I can't make fun of your boyfriend anymore. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. That'll be your Prince Charming, Destiny said, checking her watch. Right on time, as always. But when Amber opened the door, she found Mrs. Vanderburg standing in the hallway, looking elegant as always, but with an expression that seemed almost nervous. Mrs. Vanderburg, what a lovely surprise. The party doesn't start for another hour. I know, dear. I was hoping we could have a private word before the festivities begin. Destiny quickly excused herself, and Mrs. Vanderburg settled into one of the living room chairs, accepting the tea that Amber offered. You're probably wondering why I'm here, the older woman began. I assumed you wanted to share some embarrassing stories about my grandmother for Cameron to use in his speech tonight. Mrs. Vanderburg smiled. Your grandmother was many things, but never embarrassing. No, I'm here because there's something I need to tell you about that week on the island. Something I should have mentioned months ago. Amber felt a flutter of unease. What is it? The truth is, dear, I knew exactly who you were from the moment you walked into that party. Not just because of your resemblance to your grandmother, but because I'd been expecting you. Expecting me? Mrs. Vanderburg reached into her purse and pulled out an elegant envelope. Your grandmother left me specific instructions before she died. If you ever found yourself in a situation where you needed guidance, particularly involving matters of the heart, I was to give you this letter. With trembling hands, Amber took the envelope. Her grandmother's familiar handwriting spelled out her name across the front. She knew about Cameron, about all of this? Your grandmother was a very wise woman. She couldn't predict the future, but she knew that when the time came for you to claim your inheritance, you would need to learn some important lessons about love, trust, and your own strength. Amber opened the letter carefully. My dearest Amber, if you're reading this, it means that Mrs. Vanderburg has determined you're ready to hear some truths about your family and about yourself. The Richardson family has always been good at business, but we've been terrible at love. We choose partners based on logic rather than passion, duty rather than joy. I made that mistake with your grandfather, and your father nearly made it too, until he met your mother. I've left you the resources to be independent, but independence without love is just another kind of prison. I hope that when your time comes to choose a partner, you'll choose with your heart rather than your head. Choose someone who sees the real you, not the Richardson name or fortune, but the brave, kind, brilliant woman I know you to be. I suspect that if you're reading this, you've already found that person. Trust your instincts, my darling girl. The heart rarely lies, even when circumstances seem impossible. All my love, Grandmama. P.S. Mrs. Vanderburg has been instructed to help you with whatever challenges you might be facing. She's more devious than she appears, and an excellent ally in matters of corporate intrigue. Amber looked up to find Mrs. Vanderburg watching her with twinkling eyes. You knew, Amber said wonderingly. That whole time, you knew Marcus was trying to destroy Cameron, and you helped me stop him. Your grandmother always said you were the smartest one in the family. She was right. But why didn't you just tell me who I was from the beginning? Because, my dear, you needed to discover your own strength first. If you had known about your inheritance and your connections from the start, you might have solved your problems with money rather than courage. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you understood the difference. Before Amber could respond, the door opened and Cameron walked in, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal gray suit. Ladies, sorry to interrupt, but the guests are starting to arrive, and he stopped when he saw Amber's expression. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Not a ghost, Amber said softly. Just learning that my grandmother was even more amazing than I thought. She quickly explained about the letter and Mrs. Vanderburg's role in their story. Cameron listened with growing amazement, then turned to Mrs. Vanderburg. So, you were orchestrating everything? Hardly orchestrating. simply observing, and occasionally nudging events in helpful directions. She stood up gracefully. Now, I believe we have an engagement party to attend. The Yamamoto Group executives are already here, along with half of New York society. As Mrs. Vanderburg headed toward the door, she paused and looked back at them. For what it's worth, I think your grandmother would approve of your choice, Amber. Cameron reminds me very much of your grandfather when he was young, before life made him cynical. After she left, Cameron pulled Amber into his arms. So, he said, apparently I was part of some elaborate cosmic plan orchestrated by your dead grandmother and a society matron with a secret agent past. Does that bother you? Are you kidding? It's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Cameron spun her around the living room. Though I have to say I'm a little insulted that they thought I needed help falling in love with you. Maybe they knew I needed help believing I deserved someone like you. Amber Richardson, Cameron said, setting her down and framing her face with his hands. You deserve everything wonderful in this world, and I plan to spend the rest of our lives making sure you never forget that. The engagement party was everything Amber had never dared to dream of. The penthouse was filled with flowers, elegant guests, and the sound of laughter and conversation. Mr. Yamamoto gave a touching toast about how love and partnership in business were not so different. Mrs. Vanderburg regaled everyone with stories about Amber's grandmother. Destiny cried during Cameron's speech and blamed it on the champagne. But Amber's favorite moment came later, when she and Cameron snuck away to the balcony for a few minutes alone. So, Cameron said, pulling her close as they looked out over the Manhattan skyline. Any regrets about that crazy weekend when you pretended to be someone else? Just one, Amber said. What's that? I wish I had met you sooner. The real way, not through all the lies and confusion. Cameron was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? What? I think we met exactly when we were supposed to. If we had met sooner, I might have been just another rich guy who fell for your beauty. This way I got to fall in love with your courage, your humor, your incredible ability to think on your feet when covered in chocolate fountain. Amber laughed. Don't remind me. I still can't believe Marcus fell into that thing. Best moment of the entire weekend, well, second best. What was the best? When you chose to stay and fight for us instead of running away. That's when I knew I was going to marry you, even if I didn't admit it to myself yet. A year ago, Amber had been a struggling waitress facing eviction, desperately agreeing to a scheme that should have ended in disaster. Now she was standing on a Manhattan penthouse balcony, wearing a custom designer dress and the engagement ring that could probably pay for a small island, planning a wedding to a man who loved every complicated, imperfect piece of her. Cameron? Yeah? I love you. Not your money, not your company, not your ridiculously good looks. Just you. Good, Cameron said, leaning down to kiss her. Because you're stuck with me forever. As their lips met, Amber heard the sound of applause from inside the apartment. Apparently their guests had noticed their romantic balcony moment. Think they expect us to go back inside? Cameron murmured against her lips. Probably. It is our party. 5 more minutes? 5 more minutes. But as they stood there wrapped in each other's arms, looking out over the city where their love story had begun with a desperate lie and grown into something beautiful and true, Amber knew that 5 minutes would never be enough. She wanted forever. And for the first time in her life, forever felt like a promise she could count on. Epilogue. 2 years later, the Mitchell Richardson Foundation's annual charity gala was in full swing when Amber felt the familiar flutter in her stomach that had been happening more frequently lately. She excused herself from her conversation with the Japanese investors, who had become close family friends, and made her way to the ladies' room. When she emerged 5 minutes later, she was holding a small plastic stick and grinning like an idiot. Mrs. Mitchell, Mrs. Vanderburg appeared beside her as if by magic. You look like a woman with exciting news. How do you always know everything? Amber asked, not even bothering to hide the pregnancy test. Years of practice, dear. Does Cameron know yet? You're literally the first person I'm telling. Well then, I'm honored, though I suspect your husband is going to be insufferably pleased with himself. Amber looked across the ballroom to where Cameron was deep in conversation with Destiny, who was now dating a very nice investment banker she'd met at their wedding, and felt her heart swell with happiness. "Mrs. Vanderberg?" "Yes, dear." "Thank you. For everything. For helping me find my way to him." The older woman patted her arm gently. "You found your way to each other, Amber. I just made sure there were fewer obstacles in your path." "Do you think my grandmother would have approved of all of this?" Mrs. Vanderberg smiled. "My dear girl, your grandmother is the one who introduced me to Cameron's grandmother at a charity luncheon 20 years ago. She spent decades hoping your families would connect somehow." Amber stared at her. "You're telling me that this whole thing was destiny?" "Perhaps. Or perhaps it was just two very determined grandmothers who believed in the power of love." Before Amber could respond, Cameron appeared at her side. "There you are. I was wondering where—" He stopped when he saw her expression. "What's wrong? You look like you're about to cry." "These are happy tears," Amber said, taking his hand and placing it over her still flat stomach. "We're going to need to redecorate the nursery." Cameron's eyes went wide. "Are you? We're having a baby." For a moment, Cameron just stared at her. Then he whooped so loudly that half the ballroom turned to look at them. "We're having a baby," he announced to anyone within earshot, then swept Amber into his arms and spun her around, despite her laughing protests about her dress. Later that night, as they lay in bed in their Hamptons home, the same estate where they'd first met, now filled with their own memories and love, Cameron traced lazy patterns on Amber's skin. "So," he said, "what do you think? Boy or girl? I don't care as long as they're healthy, though I do hope they inherit your business sense and not my tendency to panic in social situations." "Are you kidding? Your ability to think under pressure saved my entire company. Our kid is going to be unstoppable." Amber snuggled closer to him. "I love our life. Even though it started with the most ridiculous lie in history, especially because of that. If I hadn't been desperate enough to pretend to be destiny, I never would have met you. Best fake relationship ever. Best real relationship ever." As they drifted off to sleep, Amber thought about the journey that had brought them here, from that panicked morning in her tiny Bronx apartment to this moment of perfect contentment. She had started out pretending to be someone else to save herself, and ended up discovering who she really was. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories really do begin with the most ridiculous lies, but they always end with the truth.